Hello friends, very good evening to all of you, those who have joined this webinar session. My name is Dr. Saurabh Tiwari and I am going to talk to you on something on topic related to job opportunities with a BBA in logistic management from UPS. For this webinar, I have divided my entire presentation into certain groups. In the first part, I am going to talk something about related to the logistic industry, what is happening in Indian logistic industry. What will be the impact of GST implementation, which is a very new thing for the Indian market? What will be the implementation part related to the GST and its impact on the Indian economy? Then the new trend which is coming up for the Indian market, Indian logistic market, which is related to the cold storage business, something on cold storage, and then some facts on the logistic industry in India and across the globe, and why a student who is opting or looking for a logistic management course, and if he applies for a BBA course from UPS, how it differentiate from other BBA programs. And at the end, I'm going to talk something related to the what are the career opportunities which are available in the logistic management sector, especially while doing a BBA logistic management from UPS. So I will start with my presentation. A brief definition of logistics management, which is there in many of the books which we will go across through. Logistics is generally defined as a process of planning framework for management of material, services, information, and capital flows. It includes most of the complex information, communication, and control system required in today's business environment. See, most of the people who heard this word logistic for the first time, they mostly started assuming that logistics is mostly about the transportation. But here, I have given you some specific activities which are part of logistics, which clearly differentiates that logistic doesn't only means transportation of movement of the trucks. It is much more beyond that. It involves your customer services, how you're going to deal with your customers, the warehousing activities which manage entire inventories or the finished goods across the entire chain, the inventory control, how you are going to manage the inventory across the entire movement, whether it is in the form of raw material, semi-finished or finished goods, the transportation, which is ultimately the linkage between one point to the another, how you are going to handle the materials related to various materials. See, in logistics you are not going to handle only bulky materials, but there are certain delicate or fragile materials which need to be managed and handled. So what are the activities need to be performed while handling those type of fragile and delicate materials, and then how you are going to forecast what amount of inventory, where it is required, how much will be the sales figure you are going to have, and how you are going to support your production process. So that is the forecasting activity. And finally the purchasing, that is getting the raw materials from your suppliers or vendors who are going to send the materials, and finally you are going to furnish the materials and convert it into finished form. So all these activities actually involved and part of the logistics management. Now, if we talk about some of the major subsectors and its subsegments, especially related with the transportation and storage, then we can divide it under four categories. One is basically the transportation, another is the warehouse and storage activities, which actually supports your transportation part. The third one is the courier activities, and the fourth is the specialization area, which is called the packaging activities. Now, within the transportation sector, we normally divide it under major four areas, that is through rail, road, sea, and air or freight. Now, if we talk about passengers and freight transport either by rail or road, which is mostly within the domestic part of the country, but if we have to go outside the country boundary, normally for bulk cargo, we are going to use freight transport by sea or coastal. And there is a new trend which is starting, which is called the IWT, which is inland water transportation. And government of India has identified some of the national water highways which has been identified across the countries, which is going to be used, where there will be a terminal, and this terminal is going to be used for transportation of cargo from one city to the another, where we are going to use barges. And the another is passenger and air freight transportations. With the starting of new airports, mostly in the big great cities, you'll find that new airlines and new airports are coming. So with this, the transportation of through air is also going to be increased. Now, range of service logistics sector. As I told you, range of services can be divided into transportation, warehousing, value-added services, where we are going to talk about the packaging activity, courier services. So if I divide it under major four modes, which is rail, road, water, and air, then in transportation through road, we divide it under full truckload or less than truckload, or we divide call it as ODC cargo, or also called as project logistics, and last mile services, express cargo. If we talk especially in terms of rail transportation, then container train operators, which is known as CTO, bulk and break bulk transport operators, passenger air cargo, infrastructure and ancillaries. If we talk especially in terms of water, then we have bulk cargo, containers, port management, port services. For air, we have air cargo operators, retail infrastructure like airports and aircrafts. For warehousing services related to road, we have our godowns, modern warehouses, express cargo hubs, less than truckload transshipment centers where we are going to consolidate and convert it into a full truckload. Then we have road linked logistics and food parks, etc. If we talk about related to rail, then we have inland container depots, ICDs. Earlier, mostly it was operated by Government of India, like Concor is there. Then there are private partners also, private players also coming in this sector. So there is a huge opportunity, especially in terms of warehousing for the rail. Then we have rail linked bulk cargo terminals, custom bonded warehouses for our export and import processes, yards and covered warehouses. If we talk especially to for water, then we have our container freight stations through movement of containers by water, port-based yards and covered warehouses, tanks, farms for fuel, shipyards, custom bonded warehouses. For air cargo, we have our air containers, cargo centers, express cargo hubs. For value-added services, we have our cold chain, packaging services. We also called it as 3PL and 4PL, third-party logistics and fourth-party logistics. Value-added services, which includes my packaging, tracking and tracing, just in time, insurance, relocation services, some of the courier services, reverse logistics. For rail, we have our freight consolidations, which are generally done in terms of LCL and FCL. Container stuffing, which is generally done on ICD. Then we have our custom handling, rail led 3PL services. For water, we have our custom clearances, LCL consolidations, container stuffing, destuffing, buffer yard storage, pre-delivery inspection, port and 3PL services. For air movement, for the value-added services, we have our air cargo and courier services, freight forwarding, custom clearances. So these are some of the range of services which are linked with the logistics sectors under various transportation, warehousing, and value-added services, along with the modes which are rail, road, air, and water. So it is a general assumption that, or it has been done a survey that about 13% of the GDP of India spending is on logistics, which is in one term is significant and on the other term it is insufficient. The insufficient basically are mostly because of the India's diverse geographic conditions, poor core infrastructure, complex tax policies, supply side constraint, all of which result in a high transportation, storage, and service cost. If we talk especially from the India's logistics story is indeed an attractive one based on its rapidly growing economy, the increase in outsourcing of logistics, steady supply side changes, significant government investment in core infrastructure projects and landmark changes in tax and regulatory policy. And one of the recent example is that government with the new formation of government, they are looking for implementing GST. Now this makes these things very attractive, especially from the logistics side, along with the potential to tide over inefficiencies. That has driven several foreign companies to enter into the Indian market, and within a short span of time, um, gain market prominence in a sector that is historical being highly fragmented and dominated by local players. And recently you have heard the news that one of the major mobile giants, which is Apple, is now decided that they are going to set up their production unit in India, and soon you will find a range of Apple phones which is going to be assembled in India and being sold and exported to other countries from here. Now, this actually led to that with this growth in the manufacturing sector, service sector, which is basically the logistic activity, and in fact the operation activities are going to be increased drastically. Uh, if we go into some of the glimpse and the several industrial highlights related to sectors that has anticipated upsurge in trade and commerce and a consequent growth in the need for a strong logistic industry. It is believed that India nominal GDP is expected to grow at USD 3.6 trillion by 2020 at an annual growth rate of 7%. And it is believed that by 2034 our economy will be somewhere around 5.9 or 5.6 trillions. And if we have to go with the same pace as which China is growing, and we want the China economy is right now 10 trillion, uh, we can achieve this by 2024 if we are growing somewhere around more than 7 to 8%, and which is very much feasible with the current economic stability and the country's political stability. We'll find we're going to achieve that. Another one highlight is that it is believed that by 2030, India crude steel production is expected to increase by a factor of 4. That means from where it is going to be grow by 4 times. The demand for cement in the country is expected to be double by 2030. Agriculture output, although reduced in size as a percentage of the economy, is expected to increase from 207 million metric tons to 295 MMT by 2020. The Indian textile industry is expected to triple the USD 78 billion currently to USD 220 billion by 2020. The share of organized retail is expected to increase by 5% currently to 24% by 2020. Now, India's industrial energy consumption is expected to grow double by 2020. That means more coal is required in order to generate electricity, and the support services is going to obviously provide by the logistics sector, which is either through rail, road, or through waterways. Uh, uh, Further, around 30% of the total transported coal will have to be imported through ports. So we are not we don't we need for having this much of energy consumption, we need to import coal from other countries, which is generally being done through carriers which are managing and transporting the coal from one country to another. Overall export and import, which is called the EXIM cargo at Indian ports, is projected to be increased around 2,800 MMT by 2020 from approximately 890 MMT currently. So again here we are going to be almost 4 times we have to increase. Finished consumer goods, both imported and those produced in India, will have to be transported to the country middle class consumer, which by 2030 are expected to increase fourfold from the current middle class population of 160 million. Now, in order to sustain this and to drive this economic growth, which we are projecting around 2030, the movement of goods associated with a mature economy will require a vastly superior service sector as well as physical logistic infrastructure. The transportation of India's logistic landscape needs a clear, long-term and sustainable vision encompassing initiatives that are both proactive rather than reactive to leverage India's economic potential in future. Now, if we talk especially from the point of view that there's a huge demand for GST implementation, it is believed that post GST reorganization in countrywide logistics sector will decrease the cost of primary freight, and since warehousing locations are likely to be placed closer to either to the manufacturing hub or import and export locations, that is near to the ports. In contrast, this would increase secondary freight due to fewer warehouses, as a result of which eliminate existing interstate sales penalties because we'll have a uniform sales tax across the country, a reduction in number of warehouses, which will actually lead to improved efficiency, better control, and reduction in inventory, which will actually help companies to reduce their operational cost, and which can be passed on to the customer, and improving better facilities in terms of transportation, increasing the efficiency, responsiveness will be increased. Companies will can have the advantage of economies of scale, as a result of which their reduced capital deployed in the business will be lesser. That will help us in facilitate consolidation of warehouses, vendors, suppliers, as a result of which large warehouses result in state-of-art planning and systems. IT cost of having ERPs deployed at small warehouses can be saved. Transportation lot size increase and results in bigger trucks. New distribution models for hub and spoke. Removal of C&F distributors, so companies can directly send their material to the distributors, and that can be actually being given to the customer, as a result of which the transportation cost will be reduced largely. This is a new trend which is starting in the Indian market related to cold storage, and with the development of infrastructure, it is going to be greatly support. The cold storage industry is expected to grow around 15% per annum on a sustained basis over the next 5 years, and with the organized market growing at a faster pace of around 20%. The cold chain industry users are basically Indian food processing industry, which is showing a growth of around 17%. We'll have quick service restaurants where the growth is around 30%. The pharma sectors 23 to 30%. Flower segment 25%. Spices, which is on huge demand these days, 21%. Thus, a cold storage network is required to support rapid growth of industry users and thus avoid the losses. So you can understand what is the career opportunities or growth opportunities that are going to be coming up in the cold storage, and especially related to the food processing industry, for the service restaurant, for the pharma sectors, for flower segments and spices. These are some of the value added services which are part of your logistics, which actually is a complex chain of activities which started from sourcing and going to the finally the outbound and the inbound cargo handling, where we have our export producers, we have our local factory, yard storage, express cargo agents, we have our freight forwarders, trucking companies, 3PL and 4PL. So in the sourcing and intermediation sectors, we require different profiles which are going to support as part of the companies. Then for our outbound and cargo handling and domestic receipt, we require cargo centers, central warehouses, ICD container depots, container freight stations, customer handling agents, outgoing port, uh, transit airports where we can be part. It can act as a hub part where it can be consolidated. Small airports bringing passengers from one place coming to the centralized hub, and then being given going out of the countries. Then we have local warehouses for pickup point. We have break bulk cargo consolidations. For inbound cargo handling, we have our international airports, central warehouses, local warehouses, customer house agent, CF container freight station, ICDs, inland container depot, incoming port, shipping line. So, logistic activities is not only in the manufacturing sectors, it can be a part of various intermediary activities which are performed after the manufacturing of the good from the plant and being dispatched to the exact location where it is going to be used. Then we have our consumers, we have our importers who are exporters, who are actually using all these facilities, and they require large amount of workforce which are going to actually participate in between various transition centers which are acting as a go through point through which the actually cargo is being moved. Now, importance of logistics management. Now, logistics management has become prominent and acknowledged as a critical factor in establishing any competitiveness for a company, especially in developed countries. That's why any company or any country's government is putting special focus on infrastructure, because ultimately logistic is going to be used those infrastructure. With the expansion of international trade and globalization, strategies of many companies has increased importance of logistic management. Aggregate cost of logistics can account for up to 30% of total landed cost of goods. Giving careful attention to logistics management results in reduction in cost and therefore better performance of companies, which can become a highly competitive market and can help the companies to reduce their operational cost, as a result of which their total inflow in the business will be reduced and led to a high realizations. Logistic industry directly or indirectly contributes estimate 25% to most countries' GDP and employs several million people. Now, what logistics management actually involved? It involves activities such as transportation, storage and warehouses, inventory management, packaging, distribution. Logistics integrate with its essential to many areas of business operations such as retailing, production management, quality control, import and exporting, project management, forecasting. So these are the areas where logistics is going to be used, whether it is in the manufacturing, whether it is in the retail business, it is in the quality control, in the import and export processes, in project management, in forecasting, in supply chain planning, in demand planning, in distribution planning. These are the various activities which are being performed. In fact, packaging is considered as a specialized area where you are going to full optimize your available transportation mode to its fullest capacity. Now, if we talk Indian's logistics sector, India's spend on logistic activity is somewhere around 13% of its GDP, and which is higher than some of the developed nations. China and India is somewhere 13 to 15%. US somewhere around 9 to 9.9%. Europe 10%. Japan 11.4%. And share of 3PL in overall logistics is for China and India it is less than 10%. For USA it is as high as 57%. For Europe it is 30 to 40%, and for Japan it is almost 80%. Now, some facts of the logistic industry. Some facts that average surface freight in cents oblique kilometers. For Europe, it is just 5.5. For Japan, it is 3.7. Canada, it is 2. For India, it is as high as 7. For turnaround time at ports, Singapore with 7 hours, Hong Kong 7 hours, and India, it is almost 84 hours. So, see, but with the changing demographics, it is assumed that India continues its transformation into a manufacturing and service-led economy. Growing migration towards urban areas is expected, and it is anticipated that more than 60% of the India's urban population will be concentrated in 20 to 25 urban clusters by 2030. Now, against this backdrop, the logistics support infrastructure in India's metros is inadequate for serving existing trade needs. Challenges range from the availability of assets to congestion, deregulation, and monitoring. In future, industrial clusters will need dedicated freight corridors such as Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridors with high-speed connectivity to key ports and urban centers. And that's why government is putting special emphasis on dedicated freight corridors so that we should have a smooth transitions from the port to the major cities. These corridors and access routes will likely help with the cost of supplying goods and services to these urban sectors either low or within the manageable range, and special focus will be how we are going to reduce the cost. The growth of urban centers in size and number would necessitate the need for a proactive approach in logistics planning to sustain growth. Some of the facts of Indian logistic industries. We have a greater economic activity, which is part. We have an increasing trade, growth in logistic outsourcing, entry of multinational companies. We are enabling better environment for companies to set up their production units, greater outsourcing of manufacturing, greater propensity to outsource logistics. So all these will lead to a better infrastructure board for the logistics sectors, and With the evolving requirements of trade, it is anticipated that trade will demand enhanced sophistication in logistic infrastructure and services across modes, and international standards are introduced in a competitive service-oriented environment. Existing infrastructure will likely going to become obsolete. Now, growth in the domestic manufacturing with the entry of new MNCs into the Indian market, both in manufacturing and retail segments, have given impetus to the demand for efficient warehouse management services. With the current warehousing practices being used, we see a very little investment. So current spending in on unorganized warehousing part is going to be used constitutes about 9% of total spending as against 25% in the US. So you can see the comparison where we are spending only 9% on the total logistic, whereas compared to 25% in the USA. So there's a huge requirement in terms of investments. Existing small warehouses need to be replaced by large modern warehouses that incorporate global standards such as tall design, so the stacking can be done properly. Modular racking system need to be done. Palletizations and the use of automation and IT is needed in our warehouses, especially for the niche market or the niche industries will likely necessitate value-added services such as your cold chain, which we have already discussed, warehouses, packaging, and track and trace services. Existing infrastructure needs to be upgraded to increase throughput. For example, average container handle per ship per hour in India is about 18 hours as compared to 28 internationally. So we have to need to upgrade our infrastructure of the port. Further, the average distance traveled per truck per day is 200 kilometers. 200 kilometers, which is half the storage and transportation part assets. Without these the investment travel will require commodity and geographic specific storage and transportation asset. Without this, the industry investment potential in other parts of the economy is likely to face roadblocks. If we talk about the squid model mix, Indian logistics sector is currently not only constrained by lack of infrastructure, it is perhaps even more restricted by the misuse of transportation mode for certain types of commodities, as well as the limits on the free use of transportation modes for the others. In terms of volume involved, cargo in India can be classified in a pyramid-like fashion, where with each categories entailing distinct logistical consideration. The optimal movement, the optimal movement of freight by matching cargo categories with transportation modes will crucial for expanding volumes across categories. The lopsided utilization of transportation infrastructure such as roads and railways stresses networks to and adds to inflating cost and turnaround times. Deriving the best possible selection of modes of lower congestion and facilitates the smooth movement of cargo is the need of the hour. So we not only have to look for the only the having increasing put focus on the manufacturing sectors, but we also have to look how we can develop our infrastructure in terms of road, in terms of port infrastructure, so our container movement can be faster, our cargo movement can be faster from the ports to the major cities, how we can do the consolidations, how we can optimal utilize our various modes, whether we are going to use our multimodal transportation or whether we are going to use our containers freight stations, how well we efficiently we can increase our productivity so that it help our organization to or help our country to develop better and can reduce the logistic cost, which can contribute as high as up to 30%, especially for the core sector products like steel, coal, etc. Now, coming on to industry overview of UPS, why UPS and what cutting edge we are providing at UPS so that the student can get a better opportunity. If you see, UPS has from day one is considered as a organization or institution with innovative ideas, offering industry focused specialized graduate, postgraduate and doctoral programs in key areas such as energy, infrastructure, transportation, information technology and legal process. The basic objective behind or going for the domain specific programs is to develop competent technocrats or professional and managers who are ready to join the core industries at any level. It can be either a graduate who has done BBA and can join industry and simultaneously for postgraduate and even for a doctoral programs. On the other side, UPS is also a member of the International Association of Industries. This enables the university to participate in various annual conferences organized by IAU, general conference, specialized workshops, seminars, expert meetings, and various other events. Along with that, we also gives student opportunities not only to develop not only to go through theoretical aspects, but also help them to develop the practical aspect by taking them to various industries so that they can understand the operations, they can learn the new processes related to various manufacturing sectors, related to various service sectors. They can learn the hands-on experience by going onto the ground, learning the various activities, world-class manufacturing processes adopted by various universities, various industries. Now, while logistic management is better as compared to over a general BBA, now this programs provide an exposure to students on the various aspects of the logistic industry, along with general management, helping them understand and develop skills to manage strategic challenges facing this sector. We when we talk specifically for the courses related to logistics management, we generally teach them both the general courses and the domain specific courses. If we talk especially from the general courses, the courses which are being part of the logistics management BBA program, we teach them business economics, business organization, business mathematics, business accounting, business communication, computing, business computing, organizational behavior, financial management, operational materials management. Along with that, some domain specific courses so that they can have a better uh, opportunities of getting a job and they can be well accepted in the industry, like understanding logistics business, logistics and supply chain, introduction to multimodal transportation. As I told you, government is planning and spending huge amount in developing national waterways, opening up of ICDs and logistic parks across the countries. Then we have a logistic information system. Related to purchasing, we have a supplier relationship management, how the retail logistic is being performed, logistic planning and strategy activities, and especially for the logistics in manufacturing sector. So that differentiates that we are not only teaching the general courses uh, in the BBA, but along with that, for a specific BBA program like BBA in logistics management, we also tries to give them a domain related idea and domain related experience so that their acceptability in the industry will be well taken off. Coming on to career path and opportunities in logistics sectors. So, a student who has done BBA in logistics management can join any manufacturing firm. He can be part of any service sectors like third-party logistic firms, any transportation firms. Third-party logistic basically mostly from the IT-enabled integrated services which are being provided. Then they can also join business organizations, government agencies like your Delhi Metro Rail Corporation and other government agencies which are in container freight stations. They can be part of warehousing activity. Then they can join service institutions like banks, hospitals. They can join consultancy firms which are generally in the form of providing consultancy either to manufacturing or to the service sectors. then to merchandising firms like wholesalers, distributors, retailers. So these are the broader career opportunities or broader areas in which they can part. Now, next slide we are going to talk something related to the profiles or the career paths, so that they can be part of logistic planning and analysis activity. They can be part of transportation management. They can be part of warehouse operation management. They can part of inventory planning and control. They can be part of purchasing and materials management, international logistics management related to the custom clearances, related to the bonded warehouses activities, related to the exportation export processes. Then they can be part of manufacturing, for example in PPC, production planning and control and operations. They can be part of supply chain management teams, which basically do the expediting process and looking after how the integrate the various departments. They can be part of service chain service customer service management. They can part of IT enabled services like in 3PL and 4PL. They can also do the demand planning, forecasting, logistic services and marketing and sales, and logistic engineering, how to develop the modes, how to identify the scheduling process, how to reschedule the transportation activities, which mode we are going to use. So all these part of my logistic engineering. So these are some of the career paths which a student can join. Some of the job profiles: he can be work as an analyst, he can be work as a consultant, as a customer service manager, as an international logistics manager. It can be part of inventory team, a logistic designing team, can be part of a logistic dispatch team, as a logistic service salesperson, in order to develop the software for logistics activities, materials management, production, then purchasing activity, supply chain manager, system supports manager, transportation, vendor manager, inventory coordinator, warehouse operation manager. So these are the some of the profiles, and with the upcoming of new areas, like especially in cold chain, in dedicated freight corridor, and after the post GST implementations, so new avenues are going to be open up where there will be huge demand, and especially for a student who has done BBA. Industry believes that it is very easy to mold a student who has just done BBA, and they can be fit in any profile, whether it is related to customer supports, it can be related to production, it can be related to service areas, purchasing, logistics, support staff, inventory management, dispatch team, road routing teams, transportation management, and these are the many career avenues which are generally open for a student who has done BBA in logistics management. So with this, I conclude this webinar. If you have any queries, you can ask right now. I am here to support you out. If you have any queries related to the profile, related to what else we are giving to our students at UPS, and how student can grow in the future, can be a part of this sector, and can make their profile a better one. With the growing economy in India, we have multiple opportunities coming up for the students who have done their BBA in logistics management. Thank you. If you have any queries, you can write it down. I am here to, and I'm going to reply you right now. Okay, Tanish has asked, how does it help our own businesses? See, if you have your own businesses specifically related to distribution, or if you are having your C&F agency, or if you have are in the business of production, see, there are various activities which are actually being performed under logistics. For example, how we are going to procure the material, in which quantity, how much quantity, which will be the source of the supplies, when we should get our inventory, in what quantity, because you can't procure the entire inventory at one go. As per your production process, you need to have the inventory. So there's an opportunity of how well you can manage your working capital, So logistics team actually help us in managing the entire purchasing activity. Along with that, when the product is ready, how you are going to dispatch, what mode you are going to use, what is the packaging activity you are going to perform, how much to keep in terms of finished goods, how much to keep in terms of raw material, how much to in terms of semi-finished goods, and finally how you are going to dispatch and distribute. What are the avenues if you are looking for selling your product outside the country, then you require certain export documentation. So all these activities actually help you if you have your own business processes. Yeah, we have one question related to interest test. For BBA, we do not have interest test, but on the basis of their 10th and 12th marks, we generally call them for GD and PI, and on the basis of their group discussion and personal interview, merit list is being formed, and on the basis of which uh, the subject related to a particular specialization is generally being offered to the student. I hope I am able to clear the queries of Sumit and Tanish. Okay, thank you. With this, we close this session. Thank you all for joining.